Please be seated. Liz and I have taken lately to watching a series on Netflix called The Crown. I don't know if you've seen this or not. If you haven't, it's actually pretty good. I've never been, first of all, much for watching TV series to start off with, and I've never been much of a royal watcher. It's just not my thing. But I have to say, this is pretty good. It's a series about the early years of Queen Elizabeth II's reign. I have no idea what she thinks of the show, but it's actually pretty good. It gives a sense of what it means to be a young person stuck in a role you do not want, with all of a sudden no control over your life. Every aspect of your life is controlled by others, pretty much. And tons and tons of people hate you for your very existence, because they are subject to you without any choice. Never mind the fact that she also had no choice. That's what it means to be a king and queen in England. But today is the feast of Christ the King. So maybe it's not a bad idea to ask, what does it mean for Christ to be king? More importantly, what does it mean for Christ to be our king? We have a very funny king, don't we? Well, first of all, because we get to choose whether or not to follow that king or not, unlike the citizens of Great Britain. But also because we have a king who describes himself as a shepherd. Very funny thing now. Now, when people started calling Jesus king, very, very early on, they were not thinking of the figurehead that you see in England these days or in many other European countries. Kings in those days in the Middle East, now they had power. Maybe not absolute power, but they were not figureheads. They could control the destinies of the people around them. Think about King Solomon. Remember him? Remember that story early on in his reign when two women came in with him and they had this baby, and each of them claimed to be the mom. Remember that one? And Solomon takes out this sword. And he says, well, if we can't decide, we'll just split it in two and let each have a half. And of course, one woman says, no, I'll give up my rights. Just let the baby live. And Solomon says, you're the mom, and you get the baby. That's the kind of justice that a king could mete out. A king in those days could imprison you, or could pardon you, could enslave you, or could enrich you. They had that power, and what they did, what they said, was justice. But now we've got a king who says, well, I'm the shepherd. Not just a shepherd, but a good shepherd. And a shepherd's justice is somewhat different, isn't it? Because the shepherd is the one who gathers the flock around him and gathers them together and protects them from the wolves and the bears and the lions. And when even one goes astray, that shepherd goes after them, often at the risk of their own life. Jesus says, that's the kind of shepherd I am. That's the kind of king I am. The king whose justice is a shepherd's justice. And the other funny thing about this king of ours is that we choose to follow. We do not become subjects of this king simply by virtue of birth. We take vows in order to follow. We're going to do this next week, by the way, at a baptism, right? And in those vows, we promise. And you know what a vow is? It is something that changes your life forever. And we promise to follow and to obey, Because he's not just a shepherd who takes care of us, he's still our king. And kings have authority. And we voluntarily give him authority over our lives. But what for? If we follow, what are we following? One who forgives. One who has mercy, especially on those who have no right to it. One who feeds the hungry. One who clothes the naked. One who welcomes the alien. One who stands with and eats with the marginalized. Those whom the rest of society hates. That's our king. One who will even go to the cross and lay down his life for those who despise him. That's our king. And as our king, we're called upon to follow on that same direction. Now, it is true that nobody's forcing us. What's going to happen to you if you say, well, I'm not going to do that? With a king whose justice is a shepherd's justice. With a king whose justice is to forgive, to have mercy, to go after and follow one so that they are not exiled by self-exile from God's love. So it's true. You don't have to follow. You can get away with it. And God's still going to love you. But then you have to ask yourself, why would I then choose to follow in the first place? Why would I make those vows? Why would I renew those vows? If not, in fact, to be converted and transformed, to come closer to our God, to be one with God as God is with us. Why would we do that if not to be changed and challenged? And you will be if you follow, because to follow Christ, to obey Christ as your king, means you will be taken out of your comfort zone. It means that you will find yourself in conflict with those in power. It has always meant that. It means that you will follow him and find yourself at the foot of the cross. And as many a Christian throughout the millennia have found out, sometimes it means being on that cross. The funny thing about having a shepherd for a king is he'll not force you to follow. You choose. You choose to have mercy. You choose to stand up for the poor and to feed the hungry and to house the homeless. You choose to stand with those who are hated. Or not. But while we are all gathered here in the house of that king, in the house of that shepherd, maybe now is a good time for each of us to ask, what do I choose? Amen.